Millions of buyers are sitting on the real estate fence because they're waiting for the market to turn their way. But at the end of the day, you're ready to buy a house when you're ready to buy a house. When your walls are closing in on your growing family, or when the house is too big because your kids have moved out. When you're sick of paying someone else's mortgage, or when it's time to retire somewhere new. Buyers can't wait for a market shift. They need a clear path forward and wisdom from real people. That's where How to Buy comes in. You'll join me, Leo Ansoliaga, as we hear how to buy stories and advice from real buyers and the professionals who help them along the way in mortgage, real estate, insurance, financial planning, contracting, appraisal, and so much more. Now, let's jump into today's episode. Today, I'm joined by my client, Rona, a powerhouse CEO and a proud VA home buyer. We helped Rona and her family close a VA loan in just 9 days. And in a market full of noise and uncertainty, it came down to process, precision, and partnership. You'll hear how a busy executive found peace of mind and how you can too with the right team behind you. Well, thank you so much, Rona, for jumping on this podcast with me. I got to tell you, this has probably been the podcast I am most excited about, simply because I probably, talk about your story more than anyone else's, simply because it's extremely unique. And so I'm excited to unpack that for our listeners today and share, some of that journey with everyone here.
Thanks for having me, Leo. I'm excited to talk about this with you.
Absolutely. Well, the reason why I always share your story is because most people that know anything about financing a mortgage, especially in our world, cannot believe that we were able to finance a VA loan, a Veterans Administration loan, in 9 days. And whenever I talk to whether real estate professionals, financial advisors, or even veterans themselves about this, their jaw immediately drops because they always say the same thing, right? That's not possible. But that is absolutely possible. And it was absolutely possible with your specific scenario and your story. So I guess before we get going, maybe give a little background in terms of who you are, how we obviously know each other, but most importantly, how in the heck we were able to, help you finance at home in one of the most competitive areas in the country with a Veteran Administration loan in 9 days.
Yeah, I'd love to give the background and thanks, Leo. So, my name is Rona Job. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. Very competitive market for buyers. In the past, especially in the last 5 years, 6 years, even 7 years, even going back as far as 10 years, it's been an ongoing competitive market. I am in the small business and consulting world. That is, I help a lot of small business owners streamline their businesses and their processes and their effectiveness so that they get the best ROI for their companies and the best culture at the same time with their people.
First of all, I don't know how you do it, right? You wear so many hats. One of them is a CEO, mom, spouse. I mean, you name it, right? Across the board. And now we're looking to compete and buy a property in, like you said, in the most competitive market in the country with a veterans loan. So take me back, right? Let's go back and let's say, okay, number one, how did this process start? Like what made you decide that, hey, this was the right time to do this for this particular investment? And number two, walk me through like the actual options that were presented to you by us as it relates to financing and how we were able to navigate potential hurdles, but also the competitiveness of this market with this Veterans Administration loan.
Yes. So taking you back, this was back in 2018. We were move up buyers actually, move up buyers, and we were moving closer to the city, which meant the competition was even higher than where we were.
Oh yeah.
And the at the end of the day, the secret sauce to all this is make sure you have the right people, right systems, and right processes in place, right? And how does that play out? So in a highly competitive environment at the time, it was a seller's market. still is in many ways a seller's market. We knew we were going to buy VA. We were actually coming from another VA loan and selling that house and moving into or trying to purchase this home under another VA loan. So I feel like that was two strikes against us already. We're waiting for funds. We have to wait for funds to come in from the last sale, and then we have to take the funds and move them to over the next sale, which, by the way, is not a cash sale, it's a VA loan.
Mm,
And I feel like in the last 5, 10 years in the DC area, there's been a bit of a stigma when it comes to buying with the VA loan. People just don't think it can be done, or they think that they're going to take 60 to 70 days to close. And I just don't think it needs to be that way. That has not been our experience. It has not been that way for us.
mm,
So we found this home that we really liked. We worked with a real estate agent to sort of scope it out, and finally worked together to get an offer in. We were already pre approved with Leo at the time, with you, Leo. Well,
right,
not
right.
just pre approved, we already had the conditional, was it the conditional approval? Like we had the paperwork in hand, thanks to Leo's team, that we were basically almost like a cash buyer at that point. All we needed was a house. We were already pre underwritten, so to speak. I'm fast forwarding a little bit here, but I'll go into the details a little bit more. I feel like I'm going in circles, but we found the home, we put an offer on the home, and 9 days later, we were closed.
Can you believe that? Yeah, and it's interesting what you're saying because you know, I think a lot of times, especially with buyers that are buying their second home and moving up, the complexity in purchasing properties is real, right? Whether it's your first time, second time investment properties, different complexities, different types of investments, right? But when you are relying on, exiting one property, perhaps taking the equity of that property, go into the next property and purchasing, I mean, the complexity obviously rises, it goes up. Well, now we add, the VA financing component to it, which again, a lot of consumers, like you said, are nervous about this. A lot of agents are hesitant to this. That obviously adds a different layer to the actual scenario, right? But what I'm hearing you say is that even though complexities are going to be at place, I think what most consumers don't necessarily know is that there could be certainty as well. Yeah, not
Hmm.
100% certainty, but certainly we can do 95 or 90% of the work up front, right? Underwriting the loan, making sure that we build models, scenarios, case studies in terms of, okay, if scenario one, two, or three happen, here's the solutions for those scenarios. If scenario 2A happens or 3B happens,
Yeah.
here are the scenarios and the complexity. And so what we navigated you both through was essentially those scenarios, right? And said, okay, clearly the market is extremely competitive in the DC metropolitan area, and we're not going to be able to compete with a proper a loan that's going to be contingent on the sale of the house. What models or what solutions do you have available for that scenario? Well, things like the buy before you sell program that we have available, right? Things like the bridge loans that are available. There's so many scenarios and so many solutions to that scenario. Okay, so that complexity is essentially reduced, and we have more certainty on that piece. But to your point, like second piece is okay, well, how do we compete in a market where 33% of all transactions are cash? And how do we do that?
I think more now. I think it's more than 33% now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, 33% plus, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, in the market,
Yeah.
right? Now, is that going to always be the case? Probably not, right? But, inventory levels are the issue right now. There's more buyers, more demand in the marketplace than there are properties for sale, right? And that's a function of birth rates in the late 80s and 90s, right? So, how do we compete with this complexity that we have no control of? Well, let's bring certainty in the loan side of things. Let's bring certainty on the purchasing side, and then let's bridge the gap in terms of the VA financing. So you walk into this, you come to us, and we essentially walk you through all of this. But now we're potentially under contract, right? I mean, there's specific strategies that we use to be able to compete in a competitive market to secure the home. But now we have 9 days to close. So
Yeah.
walk me through what was going on in your head, how you were feeling in that process with that shortened period of time, and obviously the remaining complexities that remain in that purchase.
Yeah. When you're buying your home, like your future home, which is where your kids are going to be running in and out of, they're going to be in that neighborhood. There's a lot of emotions that get attached to that.
Mm,
And whether or not those emotions are coming to surface for you to be able to verbalize, I think they're in the back of your mind, right? You just feel that there's a lot of weight to this decision. You just feel that there's a lot of weight to this very specific process that you're going through.
mm,
So when we went under contract, actually, let me take you back right before we went under contract. We weren't even sure we were going to get the house. We put an offer in. There, we were not the only offer at the time, and we were competing against others. There were a few things that, looking back, I really appreciated, but at the time, I probably didn't even recognize that they were happening.
mm,
One was, we submitted a strong offer. We submitted a very short closing date, and we got as close to what is allowed by the VA as far as contingencies go, which was, by strategy between you, Leo, and our real estate agent. And when we put the offer in, the nice thing that you did and your team did was actually email the listing agent personally
mm,
and kind of walk them through and give them an idea of who we are as a buyer. And you took away the uncertainty that the listing agent may or may not have as far as us as a buyer, right? Our pretty much our full picture of finances at that point. We were
right.
already approved at that point. Again, we had spent, the last couple of weeks like going through back and forth with some of the things that your underwriting team need. But when we put the offer in, I didn't think about it at the time, but I thought about it afterward. I was like, oh, that's kind of really nice to read. Even I felt like I could buy this home. Like, the person who had some doubts, like, oh my gosh, can we do this? Are we going to do this? Like,
Mm.
it's, much more than the last home. It's a larger mortgage, all of the above. And I think that nice touch, which I know is part of your process, but it really felt like this is very specific, and it was a system and a process, but at the same time it was hands-on and white glove, if that makes sense. I know these are sort of jargon at this point, right? I feel like I hear those terms so many times, but it was. And taking away the uncertainty that the listing agent may or may not have about this, this buyer couple, it helped a lot. And it actually helped really kick off a good 9-day closing period. When the 9-day closing period started, it felt like hot potato, but it felt like it was managed hot potato. I don't know if that made sense. And we actually had a title issue at our at our at our
Really?
property too. We did, yeah. I mean, it was dealt with and cleared within like a number of days, all at the same time, trying to get, the home inspection stuff back, trying to go
Mm.
through the contingencies and trying to go through the VA appraisal and the VA inspection. Like, I feel like a lot of it happened in such a short amount of time.
Again, it comes back down to certainty, right? So the bespoke process that a mortgage professional should offer in this entire equation not only removes uncertainty for the buyer, but it also removes uncertainty for the seller, right?
Mm.
It's the little things, right? It's
Yep.
it's being able to tell a story, being able to, highlight, not only what the clients qualify for, but also highlight the amount of work that's been done already. I remember when we sent out the email to the listing agent, that person couldn't believe, like, that we can move this thing in 9 days. And so after explaining it, after, seeing the story of the sellers, did you know that we can actually look at not just the seller's name on the other side, but also like do a little bit more research in terms of does this person live in the property currently? If the person doesn't live there, guess what? Like they want to move fast, right?
Mhm.
Um, like this, has the person recently refinanced? What is the actual loan balance of that particular loan? What are they expecting to potentially net out, right? That stuff matters to them, right? And so for you to do a little bit more research and provide a bespoke process, not just for the buyers, but also as you highlight the story for the sellers, that removes the friction and the uncertainty they have or hesitation, right? And once they gave us the opportunity, you're right. We were able to move very fast, but thankfully, we had 90 to 95% of the work completed on. Now, you brought up a really good point, and I think this is something important for veterans to note, right? When you have to travel, when you have to, when you're moved to a new post, right?
New PCS, yeah.
Yeah, the last thing that you need, okay, is additional stress and additional uncertainty in your life, right? And so
Yeah.
you're right. Oftentimes, people that are relocated to a new post, right, are essentially like, look, I mean, I don't necessarily have time for this. I don't even know if we should be going via the VA route here. Should we look at conventional financing? I don't want to be, stressing this entire process out and competing with cash buyers. But to your point, and my mom used to say this growing up on a regular basis, proper planning prevents poor performance, right? It's simply just
Mhm.
about planning ahead. Let's remove the majority of those items out of the way because you're right. A home is more than just the loan that you're getting. It's the place where your kids are going to potentially grow and, where your dog is going to run around, in the backyard and where you're going to have to look at the schooling. So why are we adding the additional friction that financing brings all at once? Let's get 95% of this items out of the way before we obviously start engaging. Can you talk a little bit about that from the veteran side that are being relocated? I mean, you've seen that on multiple occasions. That layer of stress, that layer of complexity is
Yeah.
real.
We've PCSed multiple times at this point, and luckily though, when we were buying again, we were not PCSing, so to speak, but it was still a move. It was still kind of, multiple things up in the air. But specifically, when you're switching posts, changing posts, you're going through one, saying goodbye to the people that are in your current post. We call it kind of the goodbye tour sometimes. Like you're meeting with friends that you may or may not see again. You likely will, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 5 years. You don't know. But you're kind of going through all of these logistical and emotional things. You're trying to get your kids out of school, trying to make sure they're doing their goodbye tours because you don't know if they're going to see their friends again. Ideally, you would, but
Mm,
you're also trying to navigate that at the same time. You have your pack out days, which is when you pack out everything. You try to figure out what goes into the plane, what goes into the ship, what goes into the plane with you versus a plane without you. So there's so many different layers in there. And at the same time, your spouse is probably applying for a different position or trying, not applying, I'm sorry. Your spouse is probably trying to figure out how to get settled into the new position at the new location. Like PCS is just a whole
mm.
beast of a project that veterans, foreign service spouses, military spouses just undergo on a regular basis every couple of years.
Yeah, and I think what you said something that we cannot miss, right? The is important. The how is extremely important. But there's also the who, right? Like who you surround yourself with matters, right? Who you do business with matters. How do you begin this process of even selecting the professionals that you're looking to do? Well, I think the process is the most important piece, but also rely on professionals for their referrals. Like we have real estate relationships in every single pocket of this area. If you want to buy in Fairfax, I know the best Fairfax agent that actually is doing business in that area that has a process to assist and support in that area. If you're looking for someone in Alexandria, city of Alexandria, I know the best agent in the city of Alexandria that can assist in that process and not just get you a house, but actually walk you through, navigate through the complexities of that market. And so working with a true professional that actually knows their area and their market is extremely important, but also, process is the most important thing as you look at aligning yourself with professionals to serve you in this capacity.
I don't know if it's just because of my own personality or my own personal tendencies, but I really appreciate when people can walk me through next steps and can sort of outline here's what's going to happen
Mm,
instead of me asking for the information. I start to worry when I'm the one that has to ask for
mm,
information, like what happens here, what happens here, what happens here. I really appreciate when it's sort of just all laid out, right? Going, hey, you're going to experience this at day one, you're going to experience this at day 10, you're going to experience this at day, 20, whatever. For us, it was only 9 days. So it wasn't it wasn't a lot to keep track of as far as days, but it's really important for a buyer like myself, for a lot of folks who, and when I say like myself, it's folks that just don't have the time, that are really busy, that have a PCS to handle, a business to run, multiple businesses to run, multiple kids to run. It really helps when somebody is sort of just giving you the next step in that process, saying, hey, expect this in 2 to 3 days. By the way, don't throw this away because you're going to be asked for it again. That, not just the process, but that level of heads up really helps when someone has a million different things to do in a very short period of time.
mm. What would you say to someone, a veteran that perhaps is nervous?
Well, number one, have a conversation with Leo.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Um, Number two, a lot of that comes, I think, from uncertainty,
Mm,
right? I remember when I was trying to decide between a rental property or a vacation home, and I ran the numbers, but there was still a lot of uncertainty there. It wasn't until we actually had the conversation and then we went through the whole, well, let's just get you pre-approved first, right? And let's see what options there are. Until you know exactly what options are in front of you, you're always going to have that lingering thought in the back of your head of like, oh my gosh, what's next? What else do I have to do? What
mm,
else do I need to do? What other things should I be preparing for? Just take
mm,
the first step. Like if you know home ownership or a real estate investment is something that you want to do within the next 6 months, I say just have that conversation first and go,
mm.
what is it that I can actually afford? And then just let them handle the rest.
Yeah. So many buyers, borrowers are so nervous about getting their credit, checked, right? I think FICO scores are very important, right? Unless you're borderline though, in terms of your FICO scores dropping massively, if you pull a credit, I think it's important to start as early as possible, like you said, because once you have the information in front of you, that's when you can make an educated decision for yourself.
Yeah.
It has been my experience over the last 20 plus years that at the most inopportune time, the perfect house shows up and now we're scrambling, right? We can't do anything about it. Oftentimes, it doesn't matter how amazing, and how fast we can move. Now we've done it, okay? But oftentimes you're going to be scrambling, potentially missing out on opportunity. So start as early as possible. But to your point, also, it's like once you have that certainty, now you can actually start to say, okay, is this a viable option? Um, but the last piece I think you brought forward is this, right? I mean, you buy a house whenever it is that you're ready to buy a house. Maybe it doesn't make sense for you to do it right away. Maybe it's in 2 3 months after you move to the new post. Maybe it's 6 months. Maybe it's a year, but start as early as possible to get that certainty. There's an interesting similarity between veterans buying a house, homeowners buying a house, and business owners. Can you talk about that? Because I think you can provide a unique perspective, not just in this buying process, but overall in business.
A lot of times, actually, when I look at how business owners plan and move forward with their goals, it's not very different from how buyers or even sellers move forward and plan their next steps. So, like any business owner, a lot of their goals sometimes are to grow, right? You grow or scale, one of the two. Or, triage. They don't know which one sometimes they're in. Am I supposed to triage? Am I supposed to grow? Am I supposed to scale? It's
Mm,
buyers are the same thing. They're like, am I supposed to rent? Am I supposed to buy? Am I supposed to stay still? I'm like, first thing that you need to do is just sit down. Sit down with a professional, Have them go over and assess where you are so that they can give you next steps. If you have a great lender, you have a great real estate agent, start finding those people if you don't and start having the conversations so you can actually take another step towards your goal.
Mm.
I saw this thing the other day and I reposted it on Instagram actually. It said, "Don't do it perfect, do it first."
Mm. That's good. Yeah. And I think, people are so afraid of approaching people that do this for a living because they oftentimes feel that they're going to try to sell him something. Now, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. There's a lot of those people. All right. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people that do what you do, but they're just really good salespeople. They're actually not giving any type of result whatsoever to business owners. Avoid those as much as possible. They're usually the ones that are going to give you like a templated like solution that, carbon copied for everyone else. Okay. But a bespoke process, a professional that actually has an actual process is going to have an assessment phase. They're going to say, okay,
Yeah.
let's see if we can even help you, period. Right. And I think that's what you're talking about. Having that conversation early on to see if that person can even help you or at least give you the first information that you need to make an educated decision is the key. Um, and I think that's where you can see success, not just in business, like you obviously are doing for so many organizations right now, but also in the home buying process, whether it's investing in your first house, whether it's, buying your second house but selling or investing in real estate in general. Um, it's been a real treat having you here, Rona. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your insight. I appreciate you more than you know, and thank you so much for giving our audience incredible insight in terms of what it means to close a VA loan in 9 days.
9 days. Thanks, Leo. I'm glad to be here.